Well, so I'll just tell you who I am and tell you a bit about the bank in the meantime. So my name is Justina Laing. I'm a group head in charge of our corporate business. As part of my job role, I also push the bank's sustainable agenda. And so we as a bank since 2006 have been trying to finance clean development. So from Kyoto protocols, we got active, spent time, trained people, trying to do clean energy. And then when the sustainable development goals came up, we decided as a bank to play in some spaces, including green financing, green energy. We actually spearheading it and acting it out by, as a bank, investing in a head office tower that is actually green. It's been EDGE certified. It took us a couple of months to get that done, but we're very proud of ourselves with a nice building management system, 12 floors of living space, solar, 500 megawatts solar. So very proud of our attempt to show the world that green buildings work. And you know, it's always better when you're the one who's acting it out. We spend quite a bit, which is one of the big stigmas about these green financing issues, where people are worried so much about. As a bank, we already are, we've been here just 2 years in this building, and we're already seeing very we've made from just utility bills by going solar and by investing in building management system. And so basically that's Justina. Apart from in the sustainable space, I do a lot with our corporate institutions, trying hard with our ESM, our environmental and social management team, to try and help people look at the need to probably refurbish, retool, and improve energy efficiency. So Anele, in a nutshell, that's me.
Thank you very much, Justina. With your brief intro, you've already set the stage for possibly the most important delineation that needs to be made in the green finance conversation, just as we started. And I see that Jubril's joined. So let me lay it out for people that maybe aren't from the discipline that have joined this dialogue this afternoon. When we talk about green finance, there's really two conversations at play, and CalBank is already in both of them. There's the greening of finance, what finance is doing in order to support the transition of society to more sustainable life, and metrics that measure sustainability versus financing green, which is the financing of green buildings. And I'm hoping that in today's conversation, we'll be able to crack open both sides of the greening of finance and the financing of green, because I know within our audience, we have project developers, engineers, designers who are very much, as they think about sustainability and transforming societies and how we move forward, thinking about how can we tap into sources of funding that can accelerate that process for them. And then also to tap into the CalBank model and the journey thus far in understanding what CalBank has built to enable it to assess green deals that would then support these developers. So the greening of finance and the financing of green. And just right there, I'd like to pause and give Jubril, who's a supreme expert, I can't contain my excitement with you on the panel today, an opportunity to just introduce yourself, Jubril. I'm cognizant that we have 45 minutes, and I just want to warm the floor. Justina has already done that for us, but please, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. So my name is Jubril Adeojo. I run an impact investment firm and focused on climate change and social impact. Alongside that, we also do financial advisory services, right? And why do we do that one particularly? Because, like you said, the green finance, for someone like me, I believe it's not being new, but it's still a new conversation in the market. So there's need for capacity building in the market. So from that service, what we do is that we work very closely with commercial bank, investment bank, development bank to train them on how to finance green or climate actions. Then we also train, of course, SMEs and entrepreneurs to properly position whatever business or climate innovation they have to ensure that it's bankable for finance. So because it's all about demand and supply. So once the demand and supply meet, then finance will easily flow. So that is what we try to do in the industry, in the market across Africa. Thank you. You're muted, so they need to unmute you.
Yeah. I hope you'll be generous with us. Thank you. That's fantastic, Jubril. I think this positions why Cyril was generous enough to put me in the moderator position this afternoon, because Igugu Global is a green finance deal room. We bridge the gap between green deal data and transactions in emerging markets. So everything you've just outlined around how you work with investment banks and all of the activity that you've outlined, Justina, I want us to take a step back in our first question of the day and perhaps recognize that all of this activity is playing out within the context of a $24 trillion market that the IFC has defined for green buildings. $24 trillion, what does that even mean in the context of a continent that is investment poor? Of that $24 trillion for green buildings in emerging markets, a good 5 of it would be a portion for sub-Saharan Africa. So on a continent where mortgages are new and there's this massive opportunity to now build green, and the discourse seems to be that banks can help transition us in this way, I'd really suppose in my first question like to say, as you look at the pie as a whole, sitting in your role in Ghana at CalBank, Justina, and then after Justina to you, Jubril, what is the biggest missing piece in coordinating the opportunity versus the rate at which we're able to execute and build sustainable buildings on the ground? Justina, perhaps to you, as with people seeking financing opportunities in order to expand. I lived in Ghana myself, and I know it's a nascent mortgage market, but there's activity there. I'm excited for you to tell us a little bit more about the strides that have been taken in the green space.
Okay, so I'm sitting here thinking, which should I choose as the biggest issue that we have? Certification, and understanding of what green actually means. It's all in capacity. So it's more of a knowledge gap. So those who know about it are truly excited about going green and financing green. We as a bank have actually gone steps of trying to tap into the world fund market and have been able to raise some monies for green projects or green buildings and to encourage people to go that way. But the knowledge gap, there's this stigma of these things are too expensive. Going green is too expensive. So making people understand the value that they get from going green. The knowledge, I think that the knowledge gap is the biggest issue. It's developing a pipeline very difficult. And the knowledge gap is not just on the financier side or on the developer side, it's the whole value chain. So if I can buy investments on the local bourse and know in a space of a month, this is how much I recoup, and this is the kind of yield I get, vis-a-vis that opportunity cost of investing in a green structure. Who says that I'm going to make cost savings? So it's the biggest that I see. Like you say, from the IFC document, that $24.7 billion worth of green building investments possible it's just a knowledge issue. I think that more people, the more we, and I like the fact that Jubril says that he works on building capacity. The more we look at building capacity, the more we can take advantage of that, because there's a lot to be made for a financier if we're looking at $24 million, 24 billion worth of transactions. There's a markup in there for a financier. So it's just the knowledge. I would stick with that. The knowledge gap is huge.
Jubril, I wanna hang back and give you an opportunity to come into the conversation right there as someone that does work on the capacity building side.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I mean, what part of what I do is that my company does is that we try to demystify what exactly is green finance or climate finance, right? So it is not actually the money that is green. It is the activities, it is the actions that make it green. We're not telling the banks to change their money to green. The money is fine the way it is, right? So that's one thing. So when I see the IFC reports of $24.7 trillion, what I basically see is that this amount, the value of buildings that need to be built globally is what $24.7 trillion. And because of the NDC targets, the Paris Agreement, the Climate Change Accord, so what we're saying is that any opportunity we have for infrastructural development, it needs to be in line with climate realities and resilience. That is just what it means, right? So now, in terms of the value, the next question is now, how does the market build or invest in buildings right now? We have owners that have their own money, that they use the money to build. We have banks as a project finance. We have a mortgage for the buyers of the house. So we have everybody into it. Just like my colleague said, so it's about that communication for us to really dissect the supply chain, the value chain, and define the role of everybody. But at the end of the day, I also wrote it down before the webinar. I said to myself that when we say green finance or green buildings, people think it's so expensive, it's so exclusive, it's for the rich people. And I don't blame them for having that perception. It's because of the way we presented it, you know. When people see IFC, they see IFC as so exclusive that, oh, I'm a small business, I'm a village, oh, I can't do IFC standard, you know. So we need to find a way to simplify what we're trying to get people to buy into. But I also like to emphasize on this one. So it's not just on the actual building, because I've heard a lot of discussion about retrofitting, solar, and all is good, absolutely. But remember, there's a construction supply chain as well. So that construction supply chain too needs to be decarbonized. You know, people, instead of us using cement, what other materials can we use that is climate friendly? You know, giving money to an entrepreneur or a business that is into converting plastic bottles into building blocks, that is also green finance. That is key as an input into green building ecosystem. So it's not just about the building, about buying the buildings, or it's about the entire value chain, which we need to really dimension and make everybody understand, every actor understand the role they play and how everything ties up together. Thank you.
I think, Jubril, I just want to hang on this point here, because you're cracking on something that is really critical when we speak about green buildings, green finance, or climate finance at large. And that is the fact that it's not the money that's green, but it's the use of proceeds, what the money does, the financing of green and sustainable developments, be it building or a sustainable, any other sustainable agriculture or any other sector. I think that's really where it's pausing on this point of it's the use of proceeds that makes it a green mortgage or a green bond, because this is somewhere also in the conversation. You're saying, how does the information that the developer knows about their green building translate into something that's recognized by the bank? and maybe Justina, this is where again I invite you to comment about when we talk about green building, it's about the use of proceeds and really speaking truth to power around sourcing of low carbon materials and the likes of that, but being able to at all times verify and also understanding that when we say the opportunity is in the trillions versus the billions, it's understanding that it's investor appetite that wants to know that these buildings are truly low carbon, climate friendly, resilient, and sustainable, much more than it is vanilla capital that is not interested in the sustainability elements. So maybe Justina, can you speak to some of that and the bank's process of managing that for clients from a walk-in perspective in terms of people that want to take this conversation forward? And then maybe Jubril, outside of the single relationship, as we break that open again, how these interactions of supporting and understanding green are playing out as between other institutions as we cascade this information of what is sustainable that is worthy of finance yet again, and getting to the green finance question.
Okay, so if a client walked into CalBank and said that I had heard you on a certain forum talking about green financing and the possibility of you helping me do same, we need, as a first step, to bridge that knowledge gap. Like Jubril says, it's the use of funds. So by all means, the world population is going to grow. By all means, this housing deficit must be filled to the best of everyone's ability. All through today's program, there's been discussions about retrofitting, sustainable cities. There have been architects on here telling us about the kind of materials that you can use and how then they convert into green, how your energy consumption then goes down, how you spend a lot more time in better spaces, you are healthier at the end of the day. And so we spend time trying to educate people on what it means. You can come to me with a building project. What we try to do is incentivize you. So whereas for a regular building project, it might cost you a certain interest rate, we try to do a few basis points off that regular interest rate to make it more attractive, because we all look at the effect on the climate. So if we built a sustainable property, a sustainable project, you'd use less electricity. It means that, especially for a place like Ghana, where majority of the power produced is from fossil fuels, then it means that we're saving the earth. We're using less oil because your energy spend is way less. Your utility bill for you is a nice savings, but worldwide, there's that benefit that we all get from your going green. In the era of the CDM, it used to be more exciting because then you were able to do a knockoff and say, I'm producing less. In another country, they're producing more. We kind of knock off, we get our carbon credits, we're happy campers. But we try to educate them on all these processes and why, looking at the kind of materials you use, the kind of lighting you use. Are you using LED lighting versus the regular, in CalBank, we have a building management system. You leave a place for a couple of seconds, all the lights go off. We talk to people about how much you can save. And we realize that by the time they're done their BOQs, the project is maybe 2% more expensive. And the savings they make in the long run are way more. I'm told that within a space of maybe 20 years, you would have yielded your investment 4 to 6 times. And that's not normal about any other investment that you do. So basically, that's what we try to do. We're looking at, yes, all these deficits do exist. Yes, there's a lot of, we are awash with financiers who actually want to give us funds to on-lend to anybody who would be interested in green building or anything sustainable. Like he said, we have many people who don't even realize that the impact of what they do is actually green. So if you can court them and make their projects bankable, walk them through processes, see how they can get certified, find a way of measuring, because like you said, once the person is putting funds into your project or making funds available to you, there must be that technical ability to go back and say, I spent 20 million, 40 million of your funds on projects that were green, and this is the end result. So we try to do a bit of all these things so that we can put it all together. But it's not easy. It's not easy getting emerging market developers to put everything down on paper, to have, you know, the technical help to be able to put it in a form that is bankable. So like I say, we are wash with cash, but finding the projects and putting them in that state that makes them bankable becomes sometimes a little tricky.
Jubril, I want to invite you back in on that point. I like that. I want to ask maybe Jubril, and bringing him back into the conversation, to say, what are you seeing as someone leading an organization that has touch points all across the continent in terms of how financial institutions bridge that gap? You work with banks and other forms of investors, but how are we bridging the gap in getting the deals more bankable? And what innovation are you seeing coming out of finance to support green buildings as a whole? I know the summit is focused on green buildings, but the sector, if you feel free, again, Jubril, to leverage the broader climate finance landscape, and how really these questions around what is green, what is a green building, are questions that are being asked in every sector. Justina, you have a broad project management background, but as people ask what is a green building, it's almost a nascent or emerging asset class that is defined, as previous conversations have showed us, by sustainability criteria around energy. This is immensely powerful on a continent of almost 700 million people without water access, thinking about how we sustain this. So Jubril, as you see almost Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and more countries sign on to the sustainable banking principles and try identify these assets, be it a building that will then be green or sustainable. What are the lessons that we're all able to learn from each other that or that you're picking up that might accelerate the process locally as well as in other markets on the continent that have not yet launched their first green mortgages? I know in South Africa, ABSA just launched the first green mortgage in March. So it's a time of immense learning and rapid change.
Okay, hello. Okay. Should I respond now?
Yes, please. Yes, please. What are you seeing around the world in how the sustainable finance landscape is unfolding?
Yeah, sure. Justina, thank you. So first thing first is that it's all about demand and supply, okay? And come to think about it, right? The commercial benefit of having a green building is actually in favor of the users of the buildings, the tenants, the landlords, the occupants, actually, because it reduces that cost of living. Now, in terms of what's going on around the world and on the continent, so I give an example. So we're currently working with the African Development Bank, AFDB, and what they're doing now is to green or mainstream climate finance into the lines of credit, right? And what I told them was that, hey, you don't want to make your line of credit green by compelling your commercial partner banks that they must lend green when there's no demand and supply. So an example is this. So let's say a bank is saying, I have a $10 million line of credit from AFDB, and any company that wants to credit this money has to be green. Then the school goes to the bank that want money to build new classrooms. And the bank said, oh, it's not green. Then the school will ask the bank, how can I make it green? So my point is this. So because the market is there, we need to build buildings. Developers will not cease to exist, okay? But it is not developers that are climate innovators. They are builders. So we have to really work a lot on building a catalog of green innovators, climate innovators that will also be funded so that they're able to meet the demand of developers or schools. Because what you actually will find is that a lot of these green innovators are still working at that very micro scale. What that means is that if a developer wants to build 1,000 units of homes, the first thing they will ask that person, do you have the materials to deliver that job? If the answer is no, there's a challenge. So we need banks that could fund those innovators to be able to mass produce in order to meet the demand of developers. So that is what the AFDB is trying to do with the AFDB, to ensuring that there's money going to this demand and to the supply so that we have ample of climate innovations to meet the demand of the market. And that is what it's all about. And the monies are already with the banks. I always say for green